Chris was never the loud type. He didn't chase girls, didn't send late-night texts, didn't make grand gestures. He was the kind of man who showed love by being there, fixing things quietly, remembering small details nobody else noticed, showing up when everybody else had already gone home. And Tessy noticed all of it. She noticed how he saved her the window seat without being asked, how he walked slower whenever she was beside him, how his laugh changed when she was the one who made the joke, softer, more real, like she'd unlocked a version of him nobody else could reach. They were neighbors. Same street, same corner shop, same evening sky that turned gold above their rooftops every day, like it was performing specifically for them. For 2 years, that street was the whole world. But here's what nobody knew about Chris. He was terrified. Not of Tessy, never of her. He was terrified of what loving her out loud would cost her. Tessy was carrying everything at once. Her mother had just been diagnosed with a chronic illness. She was working 2 jobs to keep the house standing, barely sleeping. Wearing a smile that only Chris could see was held together with prayers and sheer stubbornness. She doesn't need me adding weight to what she's already carrying, he told himself every morning. So he chose silence. He chose to be her constant without being her burden. He told himself it was noble. He told himself he was protecting her. What he refused to understand was that Tessy wasn't looking for someone to rescue her. She was looking for someone to simply stay. Then Sophie arrived, new to the neighborhood, bold and impossible to ignore, completely fixated on Chris. She found reasons to knock on his door, showed up wherever he was, laughed too long at everything he said. Chris never led her on, but he was polite. And politeness left uncorrected looks a great deal like interest to the person watching from across the street. Tessy watched. She watched Sophie bring him food, sit beside him at every gathering, touch his arm like she'd already decided he was hers. And Chris, gentle, conflict-avoiding Chris, smiled his patient smile and never once said the words that would have changed everything. There's nothing between us. She's not who I think about. He never said it. Not because he felt anything for Sophie, but because saying it would force the next question. Then who? And he wasn't ready for that answer to exist in the open air yet. What he didn't understand was that every day he stayed quiet. Tessy was building a wall. Brick by careful brick. Convincing herself she'd imagined everything. Every slow walk, every window seat, every look that stayed a second longer than it needed to. Maybe it was all in my head, she told herself. Then one morning Chris woke up and Tessy was gone. Not distant. Gone. Her mother recovered. A relative offered them a fresh start elsewhere. And Tessy, exhausted, quietly heartbroken, done waiting for a man who seemed to be choosing someone else by simply doing nothing, packed her life into boxes and left without a goodbye. Chris stood in front of her empty house for a long time. The curtains gone. The little potted plant by the door gone. Even the faint mark on the wall where her bicycle used to scratch the paint felt like an accusation. He had protected her from a love she never asked to be protected from. And in doing so, he had lost her completely. He moved on the way broken people do, functionally. He finished his degree, built a career, made a life that looked completely fine from the outside. He dated occasionally. He smiled at the right moments. By every visible measure, he was okay. But every window seat on every bus tightened something in his chest. He never searched for her. That was his private punishment. You had your chance and you buried it. You don't get to go looking. Then came Tom back into his life. Tom was Chris's oldest friend. Childhood brothers separated when their families moved during school. Rediscovered in adulthood the way genuine friendships are, like no real time had passed at all. Tom was warm, perceptive, and he had one person he never stopped talking about. He called her Gold. Gold helped me through my worst year, man. Gold sees people in a way most people can't. You'd love her, see. She's genuinely one of a kind. Chris smiled every time, built a picture in his mind of some remarkable woman. He never connected the name. Why would he? Tessy was Tessy. Tom always called her Gold. The dinner was Tom's idea. Casual, easy. Just meet my people, stop being a hermit. Chris arrived first, ordered water, checked his phone. The door opened, and the world tilted sideways. She was wearing burgundy, laughing at something Tom had whispered. Her hair was different. She carried herself differently, stronger, more settled, like the years had been kind in all the ways he had failed to be. But it was her, unmistakably, undeniably Tessy. His glass stopped halfway to his mouth. Tom grinned between them. Chris, this is Gold, my best friend. Gold, this is Chris, my brother from another life. Tessy looked at him. Her eyes processed everything in a single second. The recognition, the history, 5 years of silence, and an empty house, and a plant that used to sit by a door. Then she smiled, the way you smile at a stranger. She extended her hand. Chris, wonderful to meet you. Steady voice, firm grip. Her eyes gave him absolutely nothing. And Chris shook her hand and understood for the first time the full weight of what silence truly costs. He got her number from Tom the next day, told himself it was just courtesy, repeated that lie 3 times before hitting call. It rang twice. Hello. Her voice was different on the phone. The armor wasn't as thick here. It's Chris. Silence, the full kind, packed with unsaid things pressing from both sides. I know, she said quietly. Can we talk? Properly. Just us. She paused long enough for him to hear the argument she was having with herself. Then send me the place. He chose somewhere quiet off the main road. Low lighting, corner booths, the kind of restaurant that understood certain conversations needed privacy, the way lungs needed air. She arrived 4 minutes after him, dressed simply this time. No armor, just her. She slid into the seat across from him and placed her bag beside her with the careful precision of someone deciding, in real time, how much of themselves to unpack. They both ordered tea without discussing it. That small unconscious echo of who they used to be sat between them like a third person at the table. Chris spoke first. You didn't have to pretend we'd never met. Tessy looked at her cup. I know. So why did you? Because I hadn't decided what we were yet, she said. And I didn't want to explain something I hadn't figured out myself. Fair. He wrapped both hands around his mug. Then I was in love with you. The words landed softly. No drama. Just a man finally setting down something heavy. I was in love with you, and I convinced myself the most loving thing I could do was nothing. You were exhausted, holding your whole family up alone. I told myself I was protecting you. Tessy was very still, but honestly I was scared. The protecting you story was cleaner than the real one. The real one was that I was terrified you'd say no and I'd lose even what we already had. So I chose silence and dressed it up as sacrifice. He looked at her directly. I watched Sophie make it obvious every single day, and I never once pulled you aside and said, it's not her, it's you. I thought my presence was enough. I didn't understand that presence without words just looks like friendship. You let me leave, Tessy said. Her voice was steady, but her eyes weren't. I know. I packed that house for 2 weeks, Chris. 2 weeks. I was slow on purpose. The sentence landed somewhere irreparable inside him. I kept thinking you'd knock, she continued. That you'd say something, anything, even if it came out wrong. I just needed one word. I know, because nothing else was honest enough. She looked out the window. The evening was going gold at the edges outside, indifferent to everything happening beneath it. Sophie, she said quietly, I used to lie awake convincing myself I'd misread it all. There was never anything between me and Sophie. Not one day. I know that now. But I didn't know it then. And you never gave me a reason to. Silence settled between them, not empty, but cleared. The wound had been looked at directly for the first time, named properly. They talked for 2 hours after that, about the years in between, her mother's recovery, his career, the city she'd rebuilt herself in. Sometimes there was laughter, reluctant at first, then real. But through all of it, Tessy never once mentioned Tom. And Chris noticed. At the end, coats on, Chris paused at the door. Are you going to tell Tom? Her hand stilled on her scarf. Tell him what? We were neighbors. People have neighbors. Tessy. Good night, Chris. She walked out first. Chris stood in the doorway, understanding exactly why she wouldn't answer. It wasn't about the past. It was about the question hiding inside the question, the one Tom would eventually ask, the one her entire silence was built around. Do you still have feelings for him? And the answer she couldn't say out loud, because saying it would make it real, would make it a thing that stood between her and the safe life she'd spent 5 years building carefully on top of the ruins of the last time she loved someone who said nothing. She wasn't protecting Tom. She was protecting herself. Victor Osei made every room slightly louder just by entering it. He'd been Tom's friend since university, loyal to a fault, honest to the point of occasional catastrophe. His one significant weakness as a human being was that he could not hold information. Not maliciously, he simply had almost no gap between thought and speech. You could see the moment something entered his mind because it immediately began leaking from his mouth. He had been at that restaurant, 3 booths away, deep in a client meeting. He'd glanced up and spotted Tom's gold across the room. He'd raised his hand to wave. Then his client asked a follow-up question, and the moment passed. By the time the bill was settled, the booth was empty. He filed it away. Small thing, barely worth mentioning. Until the evening Tom hosted a casual dinner. The 3 of them plus Victor, the kind of warm gathering Tom was always engineering, convinced his favorite people just needed more time together. Victor arrived with 2 bottles of wine and no idea he was walking into a room full of hidden explosives. Tom, bearing gifts. He kissed Tessy on the cheek, shook Chris's hand, reached for a glass, then turned to Tessy with the casual ease of a man about to make the most expensive small talk of his life. I saw you the other week, actually. That quiet spot off Meridian Road. I was with a client, tried to wave, but you were deep in conversation. He nodded at Chris. You and Chris, yeah? Decent place. The room didn't go quiet. It fell off a cliff. Tessy's composure held on the surface, but something behind her eyes switched off. Chris went completely still. Victor reached for his wine, looked up into the silence, and glanced between the 2 of them. Oh, said his face. Oh no, said his face immediately after. Tom appeared in the kitchen doorway with a wooden spoon and an expression that wasn't anger yet, just the moment before it, when your mind is still collecting evidence and hoping desperately not to reach the conclusion it's already reaching. Meridian Road, he said quietly. When was this, Vic? Victor opened his mouth, looked at Tessy, looked at Chris, arrived, too late, at the full geometry of what he'd detonated. It was just, when, still quiet. And in a man like Tom, who was almost never quiet, that particular quiet was more alarming than any raised voice. Tom set the wooden spoon on the counter with the careful control of someone making sure they didn't throw it. You two knew each other. Not a question. A door opening into a room he hadn't known existed. Tom, Tessy began. How long? We were neighbors. Years ago. Before I met you. Neighbors. The word sat wrong in his mouth. You shook his hand. At the restaurant when I introduced you. You looked me in the eye and shook his hand and said, "Nice to meet you." His voice fractured slightly. How long have you known it was him? Silence answered for them both. Tom nodded once. Slowly. Victor. Give us a minute. Victor moved towards the hallway with the quiet urgency of a man who understood he had accidentally kicked out something structural. He caught Chris's eye. I'm sorry. I had no idea. I'm so sorry. Tom turned to Chris last. And this was the cut that went deepest, because Tom was the uncomplicated thing. The person who called her gold and called Chris brother, and had unknowingly been standing at the intersection of their entire unfinished story. I vouched for you, Tom said quietly. I talked about her for months. I was practically setting you up, and you already, a short, hollow laugh. I was the only person in this circle who didn't know. It wasn't like that, Chris said. Tom, please. I need air, Tom said simply. He picked up his coat and walked out. No slam doors. No performance. Just a man who loved two people choosing to have his feelings somewhere private, because he was that kind of person, the kind who protected others even when he was the one bleeding. It was Tessy who spoke first into the wreckage. She told Tom everything across several long, honest phone calls over the following days. The neighborhood. The 2 years of almost. Chris's silence. Sophie. The packed boxes and the slow 2 weeks and the door that never knocked. She told him about the second meeting and what was said there. And then Tom asked the question. Plainly, because he was a man who would rather be broken by truth than comfortable inside a lie. Do you still love him? Tessy looked at her hands for a long moment. I've been telling myself I don't. I've been very disciplined about that. That's not a no, Tom said softly. Tom, it's okay. I'd rather know. He was quiet for a moment. Then, you know why I called you gold? Because the first thing you ever told me was that your mother used to say God doesn't waste good people. He just keeps them until the right time. Tessy closed her eyes. Maybe I was never supposed to be that part of your story, Tom said. Maybe I was just the bridge. Don't do that, she said fiercely. You are not a bridge, Tom. You are a destination for someone. You deserve to be somebody's gold, too. A long pause. Yeah, he said quietly. Yeah, I know. Tom called Chris on the 20th day of silence. Come for a walk. They met at the old park, the same one they played in as children before distance separated them, the place that existed in both their memories as a monument to when everything was still simple. They walked without talking for a while. The silence of two men letting difficult things settle. Tom spoke first. I'm not going to pretend I wasn't hurt. I wouldn't want you to, Chris said. I'm not sure what hurt more, that you both kept it from me, or that I spent months describing her to you, and felt like a complete fool when I found out. You weren't a fool. You were the only honest person in the room. Tom stopped walking, looked out at the old rusted goalpost still standing at the far end, keeping score for a game long finished. Do you love her? Chris didn't hesitate. Yes. Tom absorbed it. Nodded the way you nod when something hurts, but doesn't surprise you. You should have told her years ago, he said. Everything that happened, all of it, exists because you didn't just say the words. I know. Don't be quiet again, Tom said simply. Whatever happens next, say the words. She spent years thinking she'd imagined something real. Don't put her through that again. Chris looked at his oldest friend. This generous, decent man who was choosing the friendship at real personal cost and felt the full weight of being known by someone. He grabbed Tom by the back of the neck the way men do when words feel insufficient. Tom held on briefly. Two childhood friends on the site of old games, making peace with the complicated men they had grown into. "We're good, see," Tom said finally. "We're good. Don't waste it this time." 3 weeks later, Chris drove to Tessy's side of the city. No restaurant, no neutral territory, no prepared speech. He knocked on her door with nothing but the truth and the understanding that silence had already cost him everything once. She opened it and looked at him. "Tom called me," she said. "He told me you were coming." "I know. I told him first." Something shifted in her face. A door opening that had been shut for 5 years. "You're not protecting me from anything this time," she said. "Not a question. A condition." "No," Chris said. "No more silence. No more deciding what's best for you without asking. Whatever this becomes, you know all of it. I say all of it and you choose." She leaned against the doorframe and studied him the way she used to from the window, reading beneath the surface, making sure what was visible matched what was real. "You hurt me," she said quietly. "Not just by staying silent, by making me feel like I'd invented something that was always real." "You invented nothing. It was always real. The version of me that waited by that door. She's not who I am anymore." "I know," he said. "I'm not here for her. I'm here for who you are now." The evening sky was doing it again, above the rooftops, pulling off its small daily miracle, going gold at the edges the way it always had above the street where they first became something to each other. Tessy looked at him for one final long moment. Then she stepped back from the door and let him in. Some loves don't die. They simply wait in the silence left by words you were too afraid to say. Until someone finally decides, enough. Until someone finally knocks. If this story found you at the right time, you already know why. And if you've been silent too long, you know what to do.